You're on the mic with JD, an extraordinary show for ordinary people. Let's go. What's up, good people? It's your boy JD. Hey, on this episode right here, we're going to talk about something that's super important, will make or break your career. Can you guess what it is? I'll wait. Nah, psych. We're going to talk about the evaluation, right, in the reporting system, the NCOER. For you non-commissioned officers out there, and for those who want to be non-commissioned officers, this is your report card, right? This is what helps you get promoted. You might want to know about it. You might want to know how to write one. You might want to know how it should be written. Today, we're going to talk about those things. We're going to talk some tips. We're going to talk about the regulation, right? And we're going straight out of AR 623-3. We're also going to talk about, some of the myths, some of the do's, some of the don'ts, things like that. Things that I've seen over the years, at least the last 18 years, and digest that, right? We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about some things that can get you jammed up on the board and not promoted. Now it's the new OML system. These things are super important. So here we go. So what is your NCOER essentially, right? So this is what, we use to provide the Army with your performance and potential assessments for each rated NCO. So if you look at talent management across the board, a lot of times people want to ask for your evals. They want to see what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. They want to see what your senior rater says about you as far as potential, what your performance is and how your rater evaluates you and where you rank amongst your peers. So what is the support form? So this is the DA form 2166-9-2, right? So this is what Department of the Army and HRC use to evaluate your performance, what you're going to do in the future, right? So this is where you're going to put information and you're going to do your quarterly counselings off of, and you're going to sit down with your rater and you're going to talk about your performance and you're going to talk about what your goals are and all those things. And every quarter that you sit down, you fill it out more and more, and you sit and you have the discussion, right? So that's what the support form is for. And next is your 2166-8, which is your evaluation form, right? And this is where you'll be evaluated and everything that was on your support form transfers over to your evaluation. And then essentially you should know what your eval is if you're doing your quarterly counselings. You did your initial counseling. All this transcribes over, and then whatever you need to finish it off, you finish it off as far as your performance. That's not always the case, right? And we know, and like I know, it don't necessarily work that way. I don't know too many people that even use the support form. So I'm going to spend my time on the evaluation form, right? Because that's what most people see, and that's what most people are counseled off of, even if you're even counseled at all, right? And that's another topic, and that's what I'm seeing most likely. Most people don't even get counseled. They don't even know how they're rated, what they're rated, who their rater is. I got a text just the other day about somebody that said they have been refused to be rated, which is crazy, right? But there's all kinds of weirdness going on out there. But what I want to talk about is the evaluation form and how it should be properly utilized, and the common things and mistakes that I see when filling it out, right? As far as admin data, as far as job description, as far as duty position versus MOS, primary MOS, and all these little nuances that essentially matter, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. I already gave you the regulation. You can go through and see how you need to format and formulate. That's not what this is about. I just wanted to give you some stuff to reference, right? I want to talk about the things that I see that are usually wrong on an evaluation. All right, so the first thing, when looking at the blocks, they're all alphabetical order, and they go in that order, right, all the way through. As the ratee, which is you who is being rated, you're filling out the admin data. A lot of times you don't know that, you can manipulate, the admin data that goes in there. You know how to fill out your name, DOD, rank, date of rank, all those things pre-populate, but your primary MOS. You need to go in there and put your primary, that is what you are as far as your ASIs, SQIs, your MOS, your skill level, those things you can go in and manipulate, right? So if it was my eval, I would go in there and put 74 Delta, 6 Sierra, Lima 3, 2 Bravo, etc. Because that's what my MOS, primary MOS is. It's different than your duty MOS. That's what you are assigned to do, right? But I don't want to get ahead of myself. So your unit, organization, and station, right? I always see that very generic, and that's in block Foxtrot, F. You can go in and actually change that, and you should, so it reads clearly and cleanly, because what goes in there is the generic HRC identifier for the unit that you're assigned to. But you can go in and actually change that. You don't have to, keep it in there generic. It just looks cleaner. Your UIC, all those things. Reason for submission, right? What type of evaluation is it? Is it a change of rate, or is it an annual? Is it an extended annual? Those things, important to know what your eval is, to correlate how long your eval is going to be, right? So periods covered. Your last through date, it starts the day after. So if it was December 31st, 2022 was your last through date, guess what? It's going to be January 1st, 2023. And then through whatever day your rating period stops. That simple. Doesn't always work that way, and then rated months, that should populate depending on how many months you're rated. Your non-rated codes, a lot of people don't understand these things. Schools, PCS, TDYs, anything over 30 days, right, is considered non-rating time, rated time. So any long schools, those warrant those dates, and you need to know what those dates are. And your 1059s, if you're going to school, your 1059s cover you for that. That's why you put that in there. But it's non-rated time. So if you're in ALC, SLC, whatever, or even the academy, right? The Sergeant's Major Academy, like 10 months long. So you got like 12 months unrated. But you have a 1059, right? You have a diploma. You have all these things that cover you for that time. So you put it in there. S for a school code, those dates, and now guess what? You're covered, right? So super weird coming out of the academy. You don't have no eval for like almost 2 years because you're covered. Email address. Jeez, man. Seeing some craziness. All right, so let's move on. More admin here. 1 alpha, or alpha 1. Part 2, authentication. Holy smokes. Name of the raider, usually an officer, DOD, all that stuff. Get down to the rank and the branch, primary, MOS, and branch. Understand this. I always see it 74 alpha / CM for chemical, right? No. If it's an officer that's rating or senior rating, it's just their branch. It's not their MOS, right? So you should never see 74 alpha in there. It should just be CM for chem. What the organization is, you can manipulate that as well. Go in and change it. What the duty assignment is. Are you the squad leader? Are you the platoon sergeant? Are you the PL? Put those things in there, not acronyms, spell them out, right? Are you the platoon leader? You're the, raider, senior raider. Same thing for senior raider. The rank, the branch. If it is a NCO, an NCO that's actually a raider or a senior raider, then you put the MOS. That's the differentiating factor. right? Who is rating you? Because it's your primary MOS. So again, if it was me, 74 Delta 6 Sierra Lima 32 Bravo, blah blah blah, that would be it. It's not going to be, Sergeant Major Kim, because I'm not an officer. All right, so important to understand that and make sure that that's correct. And if you're rater and senior rater, you see that on there, just let them know, when you see the eval, like, hey, your first sergeant, somebody, whoever's proofing these things should be able to see it and catch it and have them correct it. But those are just the little nuances that need to be done. Supplementary reviewer rank. I mean, all the admin data is the same. So if you have a supplementary reviewer, it'll be the same way as far as admin. So your principal duty title, that is your job by paragraph and line number. It's not something made up, right? It's not unit armor, NCOIC. It's not chauffeur, master driver of the battalion. It's CBURN NCO. It's staff NCO. It's first sergeant. It's, CBURN sergeant major. Whatever it says in FMS Web, whatever it says by MTO, that position is, that's what your position is. It's not battalion CBURN NCOIC. That's not a real position. It's CBURN staff NCO or CBURN NCO, whatever it is, right? Whatever your job title is, and whatever you're being rated as. You could be a chemical guy in an infantry position. It could say rifle platoons, rifle squad leader. If that's the job you're doing and that's how you're being rated, that's what it needs to say, because that's your duty MOS, and that changes, right? So you look at part 3, duty descriptions, and you go to Bravo, that's duty MOS. That is the MOS that you're actually conducting, right? So on my SRB, back when we had one before IPSA, right, it would say I was 11 Bravo 30 because I was in a staff sergeant infantry squad leader position. That is okay. You don't have to make some craziness up. We work outside of our MOSs all the time. It's fine. Call it what it is. Don't make stuff up. Don't let your people make the stuff up that's rating you or senior rating you. Duty scopes and responsibilities, those are the things that you are being rated on. The things that they say, hey, you're in a parachute infantry company, you're responsible for X, Y, and Z, you're assigned for these, you have that many soldiers, you deploy all over the world in less than 18 hours, you do all these great and wonderful things. That is how you meet the standard. That's the standard of your job. That is your position description. That is what you have to exceed, meet, or not exceed, or far exceed, right? Those are the things that you're saying that you'll do. You're taking care of soldiers, right? You're jumping from airplanes. You're, the DTMS person, whatever your duty description says, that's the standard. That's what's expected of you. And that's what you should know. So you should look at your position description and make sure it's accurate. Because a lot of it's just cookie cutter stuff, right? They just drop it in there because that's what it was for the person before you. So that's what you're going to do. But if that's not what you do, then that's not what it needs to say. So counselings will help that process. Areas of special emphasis. You're looking at 3 Delta. So you look at areas of special emphasis. These are the things that need to correlate on the back of your evaluation. All your highlighted performance stuff, in which the way I do evaluations is if it leads in any one of my attributes or competencies as the first bullet, which your first bullet should, in theory, should be the strongest, right? Because if it bleeds, it leads, right? It's the most appealing bullet on there to maximize the effect of the 3 bullets that you get per block, right? We only get, 6, right? So that goes in areas of special emphasis because that's what I want you to focus on when you're looking at this evaluation. So if somebody's reading it and they're looking for talent, right, they're going to look at, on the front, they're going to look at areas of special emphasis. It's going to be, say, whatever, NCOIC is the greatest thing since sliced bread. So I turn the page over under, presence, right? He's just the greatest thing since sliced bread. That's his first bullet. It's not hard to find. Wow, this guy's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Cool, right? He performs as the best slice of bread. So I like this guy, right? He's got great presence. So that's how areas of special emphasis, that's essentially like the last thing that gets filled out on an evaluation that I do, right? I like to, go in block by block, and we're filling this thing out, and I'm pulling my notes and using the counselings and the support forms or whatever, right? And I'm migrating this data over. I'm manipulating it in a way, because words matter, that the strongest bullet's going to lead for that block. So at the end, when I look at performance and overall number one thing I could come up with is he's 100% the best thing since sliced bread. In the areas of special emphasis, it's going to say 100% first thing, sliced bread. It's going to be that guy. All right, so appointed duties. All right, these are additional duties, right? If you're already a platoon sergeant and you're serving as a platoon sergeant and your duty MOS states platoon sergeant, that is not an additional duty. I've seen it. That's why I'm saying it. If that's your job, that's not an additional duty. Now, if you are a platoon sergeant, but you're in charge of the ABC program, the ACFT program, or the air assault program that you guys run in the company or whatever, that is an additional duty, because now you're on orders from your command saying that this is your additional duty and these are the extra things that you do in the unit to support. But if it's an additional duty, it needs to be in your performance, because you actually need to be performing your additional duties. So where in your additional duties are you performing these things? Maybe you're achieving something, right? Maybe you're leading something, right? And we'll talk about those things when we get down to the actual performance evaluation part. But that's your additional duties. It's anything extra on top of anything that's outside the scopes, anything that's not your primary MOS that you're slotted in is an additional duty, and there'll be extra orders that come with that. So moving on, right? So now we have the ACFT, that information is what it is, right? We're still flushing the systems out. We're still doing our thing, but now you can put that you passed, failed ACFT. Pretty generic, pretty simple, but that's about all you put in there. The date you took it, did you pass or fail? That's pretty much it. You can't really mess that one up. All right, so let's move on and start talking about your performance here, right? And character being the first one. And I think it's probably important to put that first, because you should probably lead with that, right? And what is this person's morals? How are they in the community, essentially? How do they lead? What are their values? Super important, because you either meet that standard or you don't meet that standard. There's no far exceeding that. You is or you ain't, right? And that's the reason for that. I always see the generic bullets, 100% supports, EO, sharp, right? He's the victim advocate, doing all these things. That's great, right? And you always expect to see that, and I don't really think there's anything really wrong with that as long as you're doing those things. It's when you don't meet the standard for whatever reason, right? That's what people hone in on. The rest of your eval doesn't even matter. That's why it's first, because you don't meet the Army values, right? Somewhere you're ethically or morally not meeting the standard. And, man's only as good as his word. And I think there's no real reason to even read anything else other than that. Now, people will be interested to know what that says, right? And you'll have to get JAG involved, and you'll have to, seek advice before you start putting crazy stuff in there, because there's certain things you just can't say. So don't write anything crazy, and try and really slander somebody, because it's bad enough they didn't meet the standard, all right? So you don't have to go the extra mile and try and be a hero, right? Don't do that. seek guidance, on that when people don't meet the standard on that, so you don't say too much and get yourself and your command team in trouble. All right, because I've seen crazy stuff put on there as well, and it's not fun, and then it's hard to redact. Don't do it. All right, moving on to attributes and competencies. We're talking presence, intellect, leads, develops, achieves. Again, like I stated before, when I look at presence, and in presence, in parentheses, right, it's military and professional bearing, fitness, confidence, resilience. I like to fit those into the bullets that I'm writing, so it really shows that you're getting after what presence is. So if you're resilient, make sure it says something about resilience. If you look good in your uniform and you have a great demeanor about yourself, it needs to say something about professional bearing, right? Confidence, all these things. Say something about their fitness, but put fitness in there because it's part of presence. I like to do those things because it correlates. All right, it's something that they've already visually looked at. It's already in their mind. So when they see those key words, guess what? It stands out. And the strongest bullet first. And that goes for all of them. Intellect, right? So mental agility, sound judgment, innovation, all these things. These are buzzwords, right? Put them in the bullet. I don't see that. All right. So when you talk about a bullet and you're talking about writing a bullet needs to have cause and effect, right? So you caused something to happen, and this is what it affected. It needs to be qualitative, which means it needs to be a quality bullet and written well, and it needs to be quantifiable, which means it needs to be enumerated. Something needs to be better. You need to affect something outside of your norm. Something that's not in your areas of emphasis, not in your position description, not in your additional duties. Somewhere else you went above and beyond while doing something intellectual. Something with presence, something that leads, right? Because you can meet the standard, exceed the standard, far exceed the standard, or not meet the standard. Now, here's my thing about far exceeding the standard. You know what your descriptions are, your position description, right? We already talked about that. You know what the standard for you is. If you're at a platoon level, right? You're a squad leader at a platoon level, and you do your job. You take care of your soldiers. You take them to the range. Everybody, gets a go. Nobody's in trouble. You're meeting the standard. There's nothing far exceeding or exceeding the standard there. Now, if you're leading your soldiers, or you're working with these soldiers, and you take them to the battalion Soldier of the Month board, you are now exceeding the standard because now you're affecting outside of your organization, right? Your company level is your baseline, platoon level is your baseline, right? Now you're affecting the battalion. Now you're exceeding the standard. Now they win the battalion board. Guess what? Now they go to the brigade board. Now they're the brigade soldier of the quarter. You just affected 2 levels up, right, from the company. So now they're far exceeding the standard. So if you want to be a squad leader that far exceeds the standard, your soldiers should probably win the brigade soldier of the quarter board. That affects outside the unit, right? So I have to put it in those terms to where people understand, because I, as a first sergeant, used to look at evaluations that come across my desk, and everybody exceeds and far exceeds the standard. Everybody's the best. Everybody's the most qualified. And I don't see it in the way that people write. So I explain it in a way that I just described, that if you're doing your job and you just do it well, and you know, it just affects your platoon, you're meeting the standard. You haven't done anything that the company hasn't asked you to do. You're hitting the benchmark. There's nothing wrong with just meeting the standard, because that's the standard. As long as you don't meet the standard, you should be fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you shouldn't expect to far exceed the standard or exceed the standard for doing your damn job. That's what I get discouraged about, because people think that they deserve to exceed the standard because their soldiers did well in the company. What do they do to affect outside the company? Right? So if they can affect the battalion, then you exceed the standard. If they affect the brigade, then you far exceed the standard. That's your levels, right? That's how it's looked at. That's how I look at it, right? Everybody has their own little thing, but this is the easiest way that I can explain it to somebody on how to really far exceed the standard and be the exception, right? So, and that goes all the way down. And I'm not going to get into bullet writing and all that. That's a whole nother topic, whole nother subject. And it takes a lot of work, more than just one podcast, right? Like, you really got to draw stuff and sketch it on the board and really put examples up there, what not to write and how to write. But I'm telling you, cause and effect. So if you understand that concept, that when I'm writing something, you know, Staff Sergeant Johnny did this. Because of his actions, it resulted in this. That's the effect. Qualitative. So a quality, well-written bullet. Quantifiable. Something that can be achieved, right? Some number or some token or some thing that really substantiates what they did. That stamp, right? Cause and effect. So many bullets that I see, so many evals, so generic. You know, people go to these bulletwriter.coms and all this crap, and they're just essentially just cutting and pasting. You know, you can tell when somebody doesn't care about an evaluation or an individual or somebody's career, and maybe they deserve it. You know, I've had platoon sergeants come into my office and be like, it's so hard to write an evaluation for this person. I'm like, well, what have they done? They haven't done a whole lot. Then there's probably not a whole lot to write. Did they meet the standard? Well, yeah, well then technically they don't even really require a bullet if they just did their job, because it's already on the front. That's why you're struggling so much, because they haven't gone above and beyond. Everybody's trying to put somebody on a pedestal, you know, because everybody wants to be so nice. That doesn't help anybody. That doesn't help talent management. That's why we always get the wrong people in the wrong freaking job, because everybody's lying on these evals, you know, and trying to paint this picture and this facade. And then when they show up, they get exposed. And the unit and the soldiers suffer. I've seen it so many times, you know, because you get a squad leader in and you have these expectations, and the first sergeant gets their packet and they're looking at their evals. Like, I was brought up to write evaluation. I was brought up to take care of the admin portion of that. And because it was so important for my career, my soldier's career, my subordinate's career, to develop lieutenants on how to write evaluations, that my old platoon leadership took great interest and brought in writing experts, military, civilian, right? And we had writing classes and things that we had to do because it was that important. That's a lost art, you know? You see some of the way people write today is how they text. And I'm just like, what are they trying to say? Like, holy smokes. Like, the red squiggly line didn't give away the fact that this thing was spelt wrong. So it's things like that, right? And you can tell when people actually know what they're doing and care, and people that don't, you know, and just just throw something on there and, hey, bro, it's cool. You know, here, just take this. It'll all buff out. I got promoted, and, you know, my evals pretty much look like this. Is that really the type of leader you want to be? You know, so those things are important, and you should probably take it a lot more serious than I see and than I do. And like I said, I get hit up all the time. Staff sergeants, sergeants first class, first sergeants, all the time. You know, can you look at this? Or look at this. Look at what I'm getting from my platoon sergeants. And it's like, holy smokes. Or from another master sergeant. Or I would expect it from a lieutenant, right? Who's only written maybe one or two or their first one. You know, I get that. But when I see senior enlisted people writing evaluations and it looks like, you know, they just graduated high school or worse, it's crazy, you know, because our regulations are out there on what the Army writing style is. You know, you can dive into that. You can, you know, writing for dummies. You can YouTube some stuff. There's so many resources out there. Or you could take a college class, right? There's that, right? Use some of that TA and try and make yourself better, right? So you know what your eval should look like. You know what your subordinates' eval should look like. And you should probably care because that's how you get promoted, all right? So the rater talks about performance, you know, and how you did. And oftentimes your senior rater doesn't see you all the time, right? My senior rater right now is the chief of staff for the division. I don't see him on a regular basis at all, right? Maybe once or twice a week in passing, if that. He doesn't know what I do on a daily basis. So when you're writing performance as a rater, you are essentially writing that for the senior rater. So the senior rater can see what your performance is and base your performance off your potential. Because that rater and senior rater are going to have a conversation, right? And then from there, the senior rater is going to enumerate you. That enumeration is important because being ranked, not everybody can be number one. Do not take a percentage. Don't say top 30% of all NCOs I've ever worked with in my 20 years experience. That does nothing for you on the board. Demand that you be ranked. Doesn't matter if you're one of 20 and you're friggin' number 10, right, middle of the pack. Maybe those other 9 are super great and maybe all 20 of you are super great. But there's going to be certain things that are going to define you, right? And rank you. You need to be ranked. It's a thing. And it's a discriminator if you're not. So if you're mad that, you know, I'm not number 1, I'm not number 2, I'm not number 3, you know, or I'm 3 of 3, that's not that bad. Somebody has to be number 1, somebody has to be number 3, you know, but it can still be written in a way to where it shows that you have utmost potential. Because guess what? The unit I'm in, everybody's badged up, tabbed up, doing all kinds of great and wonderful things. It doesn't mean that I'm not competitive. Doesn't mean that I'm not great. I mean, but people are going to take account what unit you're in, right? What the expectations of people in those organizations are. And they're going to look at it and be like, well, if he wasn't in that unit, he was in this unit, he'd be number 1 off top. I get it, right? He's in a high performing unit with a lot of freaking winners, right? So all those things are taken into account, you know? But if you're over there in the Boy Scouts and you're still number 20, well, it's probably a problem, right? It's probably a you thing, and there's other things you need to work on besides your eval. There's bigger problems. You might need to seek other employment. But what I'm talking about is you staying competitive. Somebody's got to be number 20. Not a big deal in a high-performing unit or a unit that's getting after it, or it can still be written in a way to show like, hey, you should be a battalion CSM. You should be a first sergeant. You should be a platoon sergeant. You got potential, right? And then you're looking at successive assignments, all right? This is the last block on the bottom. And 1, 2, and 3, you need to take this straight off your career track. Don't make stuff up. I see the craziest things that don't even make sense. You're either a squad leader, you're a platoon sergeant, right? You're an ops sergeant, you're an operations sergeant major, right? You're either going to be a drill sergeant, recruiter, EO, EOA, whatever. It doesn't need to say anything ridiculous. Stop making stuff up. It's not helping you for future assignments. If your senior rater or your rater doesn't know what your success of assignments should be, you should talk about those things in your counselings. I want to be a drill sergeant. That's what I want to do for my broadening assignment. I want to be a first sergeant because I'm a sergeant first class right now that's getting looked at for master sergeant. Right? I want to be a platoon sergeant because I'm an aspiring, and I'm a high-speed squad leader. So it needs to say platoon sergeant. That's it. That's all it needs to say. You can still be a squad leader. You can be an operations NCO. Anything that's on the same level. Right? CRD team leader, whatever. As long as it's on the same level of what you're trying to aspire, it needs to be a real position. Stop making them up. So that is, in about 30 minutes, what the eval's about, right? And the things that I see and the mistakes that I see all the time. And I sit on these boards and I sit on promotion boards, and, buddies of mine, they've sat on DA select boards, and they go through these. Your senior rater block is what really matters. Enumeration really matters, right? Everything that's in performance is for your senior rater, essentially. Nobody on a DA board panel really has the time at first glance to look at all your performances. It's not going to happen, right? Now, if there's something that they need to go back and kind of define, and they got the opportunity, then sure. If it depends on if you're going to make the cut line or not. But biggest thing is enumeration, right? And it needs to state that. It needs to state that you got potential. Don't let your senior rater put how great of a piece of sliced bread you are and you perform well for the unit, because it'll get kicked back. It needs to be all potential. Your rater does performance, your senior rater does potential. And guess what you get promoted off of? Potential. So it's important to have those senior rater counselings and sit downs and discuss what your future is and what your real potential is. And what your goals are. And that helps when it comes to deciding what your real potential is and how your performance is written, and how that affects your rating. So I appreciate everybody listening. It was kind of a rant, I guess, at the same time, because I'm just tired. I'm tired of seeing it. I don't mind getting the calls, but it wastes my time when I read this crap. And, well, it's exactly what it is, crap. And I'm like, you couldn't see this? And then they get an earful from me because they're like, well, I thought, no, you're not educated either. Like, you don't know either. So if you really care about your career, you'll know how to write an eval. You'll know what should be expected on an evaluation, And it's not that we do things for our eval. Like in my past segment, I said, we don't do things for our evaluation, right? To go on our evaluation. We just execute well and our eval writes itself. That's essentially what it is. So those things that you go out there and do, those are the things that should be captured on your performance, right? And that shows the potential to your senior rater. Like, wow, this guy is really affected outside. He's really far exceeded the standard here, here, and here. Exceeded the standard here and here, right? Got great character. Like, he should be a first sergeant, and it should state that. You might be 2 of 3, but must select for first sergeant, must select for MLC, promote ahead of peers. All those things can still be in there. And guess what? You're still ranked number 2, highly qualified. You're just not most qualified because somebody else is a little bit better. Or maybe they, the senior rater's profile is so junior that they don't have the 24%. That happens too, because they just burn their most qualifieds on everybody, right? And then the ones that really deserve it, guess what? They don't get it. And that's crazy too. That's a whole nother discussion, right? For senior raters. If somebody really deserves it, then they should get it. But don't not give it to them because they have other aspirations. And you're like, well, I don't want to waste it on him because he's getting out. But he was truly the best. God, he's getting out. Maybe you guys aren't living up to his expectation. You ever think of that? Right? So it goes both ways, you know? But at the end of the day, like, that's what it is. That is what it is. Like, most qualified deserves most qualified. If they ain't got it, I get it. They can still be number one, just highly qualified. That's kind of frowned upon too. You know, it is what it is, but it's kind of frowned upon too. Like, if they're number one, where's the MQ? Board members are like, it's kind of sketchy. So look at that too. When people are trying to say you're number one, but you're only highly qualified. Well, how are you number one if they don't have an MQ? Think about that. So, all right. Well, appreciate you guys hanging in there and listening. Again, I mean, kind of a rant, but I really want to drive this home because it's so important. You know, your career depends on it, your family's, you know, success and future prosperities depend on it, right? Everybody loves to see you stand out there and get promoted. I love it the most, right? I love to see people win, and we all want to see you win. And look at the eval, right? Take it seriously. Hit me up if you need something. I'm always willing to look at your stuff. I'm always willing to give constructive criticism and feedback. And everybody that knows me know I will. All right, but until next time, you're on the mic with me, JD.